Well, welcome back again this week. Well, it seems as though ex-Speaker of the House, Hassard, has been found out. It seems as though he was a pedophile and rose to become Speaker of the House. He's not the first individual like that has been found out in these regards. You know, my own congressman for years was Thomas Foley. And Thomas Foley always denied he was a homosexual, except there was an article that appeared in the Washington Post while he was rising to that position of Speaker that said his boy lover was chasing him down the street with a pistol. It never got into the local newspapers in Spokane, Washington, for some reason or another. I think I know the reason why it didn't, but anyway, it didn't. But he always said that he never was of that ilk. At any rate, when you accumulate a lot of power into the speakership and things like that, you will find that people of that propensity and others who are very corrupt rise to that position. Here, for instance, is a letter that I received back from Jim Wright when he was Speaker of the House a few years ago, and attached to it is a pin. Well, I blew this pin up, and this is the pin he was passing out to people, trying to get people to understand that what we needed to have was a great peace accord and become friends with the Soviet Union, and we could work together to more or less rule the world, I guess. At any rate, this was during the period when a lot of people said that communism was evil and that sort of thing, and yet Speaker of the House was actually getting closer to the communists, made a trip to Moscow, gave a speech there to the Russian people, that sort of thing, how the United States and the Soviet Union need to get together. It's also the same time period when we were evolving into agreements behind the scenes by the presidents of the United States and Putin and his coterie to become partners with Russia. At any rate, that was still under the Soviet Union. That's the sort of thing that goes on behind the scenes. A lot of people don't notice it, of how close these speakers of the House and other leaders of the Senate and so on and so forth are not what they appear to be in public. They're not what they appear to be when they give campaign speeches and that sort of business. Today, we have a speaker, Boehner, who is very active in the Transatlantic Policy Network, which is trying to merge the United States with Europe. And they want to form a one world government eventually, but that is the immediate goal, rather, of the Transatlantic Policy Network. And so they are trying to do it through this so-called free trade. They disguise this merger, this union between the United States and Europe by calling it free trade. You can look up the Transatlantic Policy Network on your internet, and then you will see just exactly what's going on. Now, immediately when you first start browsing in that website, you won't see that their goal is to merge the United States with Europe. But you keep looking and it will come out in their papers and their studies and their seminars and so on and so forth. And of course, Europe was sold this idea too, of just getting together economically. Don't worry about it. We'll be able to travel from one country to the next without passports, free trade, economic pacts, so on and so forth. Now they are all involved in a European Union of one state. Part of that process was selling the Europeans and Americans on the idea that communism was dead. Here, for instance, Václav Havel just died. He was the former head of Czechoslovakia when it first came out from behind the Iron Curtain. Within a matter of weeks, he was elected the new president of Czechoslovakia. And in fact, it says here that the Czech playwright stared down communism is the subtitle on this article in the Investor's Business Daily. The interesting thing about this is that prior to this tearing down of the Berlin Wall, prior to the so-called death of communism, we had a man who defected from the Soviet Union, who was in the planning department at one time of the KGB, the secret police of Russia. And he wrote a book well, he was here, and that book was published 5 years before the Berlin Wall came down. And he told us in that book that the plans were to make communism look as though it had disappeared. It existed no longer. The Berlin Wall would probably come down, he said. That sort of thing. And these are the individuals that the KGB will place into the new governments in Poland and Czechoslovakia and that sort of thing. And he named Havel as their man they were going to put into this former communist state as the new anti-communist leader. It would all be show business. And so that's what's happened. Another article just recently, recently to me, for you younger set, 2002 isn't that recent. But this also was out of Investors Investors Business Daily. The article says, "Why Ex-Communists Hold the Power in East Europe." And it pointed out that Eastern Europe countries that were behind the Iron Curtain are still ruled by people who used to rule it under the Communist Party, just new personalities. Instead of the top man in the Communist Party, they took him out of power and put number 2 or number 3 in. And the article is very revealing because basically it says that the reason that these ex-communists have been successful in staying in power in those countries is because of the United States government. That the United States government has helped them get elected over the centralist or right-wingers of those countries. And the reason why is because these ex-communists want to be part of NATO. These other people did not. Think that one over for a moment. Those are the sorts of things that go on that, you pick up a little fact here, a little fact there, various publications that I read. You start to put it all together and it makes a very interesting picture. Another one that's very interesting is the situation in Iraq. Now, they say that here at the Wall Street Journal, Iraq begins drive to retake province. And then on the front page, just this last week, it was Wednesday of last week, it shows a picture of some of these Iraqis moving in to retake sections of their country from the militant Islamic State. Interestingly enough, they've got a picture of their Anatoliy on the vehicles. In other words, just like Iran, the people that are fighting in Iraq, and these are the Iraqis, are putting the Anatoliy ahead of their own Iraqi government. So basically, this is a clue that when this is all over, you're going to see a very militant Islamic State in Iraq after they have supposedly gotten rid of the militant Islamics. Islamic State's gains revealed new prowess on battlefield, talking about ISIS and that sort of thing. Ladies and gentlemen, ISIS had to have been brought together, trained, and recruited into what they're doing. It just didn't come up out of the sands of the desert. We're talking about a major army here. Somebody had to put it together, somebody had to train it, somebody had to arm it. We just had a recent article in the New American, and you can switch over there and read it. The fact that our own government helped build ISIS and train them and arm them and everything else. It's a quite recent article, just in the last couple of weeks. I think I'll end up on this subject because it's out of, again, the Wall Street Journal. Cleveland agrees to policing oversight. In other words, the city government of Cleveland is now going to allow the federal government to come in and have oversight over the practices of their police department. This is one of the initiatives that is being done by the Obama administration to bring all local police under the purview of the federal government, to where the federal government will control local police through grants, money, equipment, training, oversight. There was even a new initiative promoted on CNN a few days ago, where now they want to have local police to become part of a national terrorist watch, to where the local police, in conjunction with the federal government, will join the war on terror. All of these little things being put in place to federalize our local police, where you and I will lose control over our police, and it will be run out of Washington, D.C. And then you can extrapolate the lines on that one and figure out where that's going. We have to support our local police, regardless of what you think of them, in the way of keeping them independent and controlled by our own city councils. Until next week, we'll see you then.